Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and Tim. I've got Tim Delace with me. Tim, how are you doing?
Oh, I know our discussion is not about domestic cricket, but if anyone is watching the domestic cricket at the moment, I'm not in a great mood. Province have had to field the second string team against your boys, so I'm not in a great mood. But I'll put it aside for a minute.
Look, I didn't want to bring it up. It's time to see George Linda and Carl Simmons bowl for 200 overs. But yeah, it's slow going there at the Wanderers, and the clouds are coming in. So it's going to be quite interesting to see if they get all the overs in. But anyway, remember, we are a South African cricket podcast. You can follow us at Full Quota Pod on X. You can also subscribe to the Full Quota Podcast channel on YouTube, and then also the Full Quota Podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And finally, please do remember, you can buy some coffee. We love coffee. And it helps us. It not only invigorates us, but it helps us produce more content. So if you go to buymecoffee.com /FullQuotaPod, any and every contribution is appreciated. Today's an interesting day, Tim. We are going to be talking about two teams that need effectively 2 wins. And one team is going to end this series out of the World Test Championship, while another is going to be hoping that it gives them a boost to try and get to Lords at the end of next year. We'll be previewing the Sri Lanka Test series with Estelle Vasudevan from Sri Lanka, just to get a sense of the Sri Lankan team and the importance of this Test series to them. And somehow Sri Lanka found a way, similar to South Africa, where their Test sides are fighting for relevance and a trophy. And Sri Lanka have Australia to play after us. We have Pakistan to play after this. And South Africa need 3 out of 4. Sri Lanka need effectively 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 4 as well. So it's going to be quite interesting. Let's bring Estelle over and let's have a discussion. Hi, Estelle. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing really, really good. The last time Sri Lanka came to South Africa, I know we've spoken, I think, at the World Cup earlier and this year. So we're no longer talking limited overs cricket, talking Test cricket. And I think the last time Sri Lanka was here, they created an upset, beating South Africa in the same venues that they're going to be playing now. Is there a chance of that this time with the Sri Lankan team that's playing some really good Test cricket at this point in time?
I think the last series would definitely have given them a lot of confidence because, we were talking of if you look at the South African side on paper in 2019, it was a stacked side, right? You had your Hashim Amlas, you had Dale Steyn, Faf du Plessis was still part of the side. So you kind of, Dean Elgar, another one, you kind of had the upper hand on paper. And of course, Sri Lanka had never won a series there before. This time things are a bit different where you have a lot less experience in the South African side. So I'm sure Sri Lanka going into this series pretty confident. But at the same time, I think there's a lot more pressure on this series than there was in that one where nobody was really expecting Sri Lanka to even take a game in that series, right? And they ended up winning 2-0. But here, having had the run they've had and, having the team that they do, where they've got basically one of their most experienced Test sides that they've fielded in their history, right? So with that and the opportunity, as you mentioned, to make it into the World Test Championship final, that comes with a bit of pressure as well. So I don't know. I think the team will be confident, but of course they're going to have to actually go out there and get the job done, right? It's not about what's on paper. Cricket isn't played on what's on paper. So we'll have to see how things go.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Just on that, I was just going to touch on that, on the difference in the squads, and ours is from the last time. It's, as you mentioned, it's missing an awful lot of experience. I look at the misses that you have, and you're missing, I think, 5 or 6 players as well, but only one of them that you would say that you could miss is that Lakmal. But even in Lakmal, with his experience, you've replaced him with a new generation of pace bowlers that are actually an upgrade. They might not have reached the level that he did when he ended, but they are without a doubt an upgrade. So just touch on us on the changes to your squad, and I certainly think in general it's an upgrade for your squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in both batting and bowling, like if you look at the batting, Pathum Nissanka is an addition from the last time Sri Lanka toured, right, for tests. So he's in, and then you've got Kamindu Mendis, who's been on the purplest of purple patches in Test cricket over this year. So that's two of the batters who are coming into that squad. And then you have in the bowling department, Visha Fernando is still there. He's a guy who performed well against South Africa in 2019. And as you mentioned, Suranga Lakmal is the one big kind of piece that Sri Lanka is missing. But Sri Lanka have Asitha Fernando, who has been, in my opinion at least, the second best probably fast bowler in Test cricket over the last year or so. He's been really good, particularly in conditions that aren't assisting quick bowlers. I mean, in subcontinental continental conditions, I would say the second best fast bowler we see, because he's got all the attributes to be good in Test cricket. He's the kind of guy who can reverse the ball, can bowl well with the new ball. So I think you're right in saying that there have been a few upgrades to that squad. But again, like the flip side is Asitha was not there in that last series. Kamindu Mendis and Pathum Nissanka have not played red ball cricket in South Africa. So that the quality is there, but how they adapt to conditions would be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, that's actually going to be quite one of the interesting things in terms of Sri Lanka's pace attack, is the ability to be able to adapt to the pitches that we have, right? And we know that most of the team came down to South Africa to try and get used to the conditions here, and it's mostly been focused on the batting. And so in the batting, right, like obviously Sanath Jayasuriya as the new coach, and we're going to talk about him, but how's the batting stacking up? Obviously you've had a great year with your batters, and they've played well, but like just highlight who the standout batters were and who Sri Lanka might need to come through for them in this series.
Yeah, I think this year the highlight has obviously been Kamindu Mendis, right? His start to his Test career has been incredible. But in these conditions, in my mind, you have to have your Dimuth Karunaratnes, Angelo Matthews, DDS and Chandimal getting runs, because they are going to be the ones who can bring that experience out. They've been to South Africa multiple times. They've made runs in South Africa, even Kusal Mendis for that matter. But Sri Lanka will need them to step up and really lead the way, because if you look at that South African side, Rabada is going to be one of the key players for them, right, with the ball. It doesn't matter how well Sri Lanka bowl if the batters can't stand up to a bowler like Rabada. So it's going to have to be those experienced batters, as I mentioned. And there are a few changes in terms of where the batters bat now compared to 2019. So you have Dinesh Chandimal, who will probably bat at number 3. Whereas Kusal Mendis will be dropping down to number 7 as the wicket-keeper batter. So a few changes in that aspect as well. But to me, the key players will have to be Chandimal, Matthews and Dimuth Karunaratne, because they'll be 3 of Sri Lanka's most experienced batters batting, and they'll be batting in the top 4, right? So they're going to be the ones who need to make the runs for Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We have to touch on Kamindu Mendis. I remember seeing him 3 or 4 years ago play white ball cricket. I'm thinking, yeah, he's got something. He's obviously got some ability in both facets, actually, because he was bowling at that time quite a bit. What do you think has been the upturn in him, if there has been a specific thing, or has it just been and maturity. He's just got older and he's played more. What's changed in his career to have him have such a purple patch? Because at the moment, for the last 12 months, I think he averages 90, which is quite exceptional.
Yeah, I would think that what's happened is a lot to do with the fact that he's kind of played a lot of first class and a team cricket, and that's really helped him. It's interesting actually. A lot of people talk about how Kamindu Mendis debuted against Australia in 2022, right? And he made a 70 odd not out. He looked really good with the bat, and there's a lot of criticism now when he started making runs that they should have stuck with him then, right? But he was replacing Dhananjay De Silva, who was injured at that point, and as you would expect, once the experienced player came back into the mix, he was left out. I think that actually was a blessing because it meant that we saw how good he was, but he also had time then from that point onwards to really work on his game and build on that confidence that he got making runs against a team like Australia in that series, right? And he wasn't what you call like, you see a lot of players who are suddenly hyped up when they play one or two good innings, but he and actually even Pathum Nisanka, those are two guys who have made a lot of runs domestically, and when they've been given opportunities in A cricket, they've done really well there as well. So I think those opportunities, it's basically him cashing in on his form, right? That he's kind of been in good form, and that confidence has kind of helped him to carry on with it. I would also say, to be honest, the way Sri Lanka have eased him into the side, you would think he's a top 4 batter, right? Like as soon as you see him, but he started at 7, and they gave him that opportunity to kind of build his confidence, get some runs under his belt, kind of keep him protected until he was ready to move up the order. I think even in this series, he'll probably bat at number 5, right? Even though in the future, maybe in the next cycle, we would probably see him at 3 or 4. So that has also helped, in my opinion, that fact that they haven't kind of burdened him with the responsibility of, okay, you're the next Aravinda, or you're the next Sangakkara, and you need to go up the order and make all the runs for Sri Lanka. Instead, they've allowed him to kind of ease into his game, which has been refreshing from a Sri Lankan point of view, because that doesn't always happen with the talented players that come through.
Interesting.
Yes, no, that makes sense, and yeah, it's been quite an interesting story to have him coming into international cricket and doing so well. And the other obviously key thing, obviously, he doesn't bowl alone. He bowls in tandem with many other spinners, and one of them is Prabhat Jayasuriya, who's has been sensational this year, and obviously you've got Lasith Mbaldenia and Nishan Paris as the other spinners. But the question obviously then is, how are Sri Lanka going to approach this part of their game? It's a strength on the subcontinent, but it's not necessarily used here in South Africa. In the last tour, it was used quite strongly, and the question obviously, are they going to be leaning on that? Obviously, bringing back Mbaldenia is kind of reminding us of his debut Test series against us, where he just bamboozled the South Africans in terms of playing spin.
I don't think there'll be a temptation to play more than one spinner, to be honest. I think Sri Lanka have shown in the last year or so, when they've traveled overseas, that they're confident with their quick bowlers. I mean, the last test that Sri Lanka played was against overseas, was against England, and they didn't even play Prabhat Jayasuriya, right? They went with the 4 quicks. So I think they've shown that they don't need to be over-reliant on Jayasuriya's spin bowling, because they've got a quality fast bowling unit with them now. I think if you look at some of the players, even not in this squad, Sri Lanka's fast bowling stocks have never been stronger, right? Limited overs wise or test cricket. So I don't think there'll be a temptation to play 2 spinners. Prabhat will probably be the one who lines up in the first test. I don't know. There's even I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to play 4 quicks again at some point, depending on how the surface plays.
That's very interesting, because you've got if I'm remember correctly, you've got 3 potential spinners at the squad. So that's certainly interesting that you think you're going to only go with 1. But as you say, your fast bowling is been massively improved with the last couple of years, so that would make sense. Somebody we didn't see because we unfortunately couldn't see the Sri Lanka New Zealand series over here, which is a first for us. We normally do get most Test cricket. But obviously, I was keenly watching the scorecards and stuff. Jayasuriya, obviously he's been around a bit, but just how important was that for him to make a name for himself in that series, to be a large reason as to your success there, and going forward for this series, being your number 1 spinner?
I think since his debut, he's kind of carried that responsibility right on his shoulders, particularly playing in Sri Lanka, where Sri Lanka played a lot of their tests in Galle, and conditions have been very, very spin friendly. So he's carried a lot of that load. Usually in Sri Lanka, he has Sri Lanka have tended to go with Ramesh Mendis to partner him, but overseas, I feel like they understand that his role may not necessarily be picking up 5-6 wickets in every innings, but rather keep it kind of quiet and play that kind of role for them. I think he kind of adapted well to that in the UK as well, not trying too many things, and that's one of the characteristics of his game is he's not trying to rip the ball or trying to do too much, right? He's very much in that keep it in the correct spot and the results will come to you, that kind of spin bowler. So I think going into this series as well, his confidence will be high, as you mentioned, because he did have a good performance against New Zealand, particularly because if you think about it, New Zealand then went to India and played Ashwin and Jadeja quite comfortably, right? So I'm sure Prabhat and the Sri Lankan team also take a bit of confidence from that. So he will go into the series confident, but I think the attacking options will be the quick bowlers in this series.
Okay, that's actually quite insightful, because I think South Africa has an issue with spin, and yeah, it was shown in the T20s. It's been shown where we've travelled, but obviously we played well in Bangladesh. But yeah,
that's why I asked. That's why I asked the question. I actually saw Estelle in your earlier podcast. You guys on Murali End. Watch that podcast if you're interested in Sri Lankan cricket. You guys said that. You guys said you don't think you're going to play more than 1, which automatically, for me, if you're playing in North Durban or St. George's, I'm automatically thinking it's got to be 2 spinners. But you certainly make a good argument as to why that's not the case. Certainly an interesting. Yeah.
The one thing that also might influence that decision is the fact that Dhananjay De Silva is quite handy, right, with the ball. So they will be relying on him also to bowl a few overs. Kamindu Mendis to a lesser extent, but I think Dhananjay De Silva in particular will do a lot more bowling if it's spin friendly conditions. But I mean, I say 1 spinner, but the one thing we've seen under Sanath Jayasuriya is the flexibility with the squads and the kind of not being afraid to kind of go away from what's been your set plan. So we could end up seeing someone like Nishan Piris or even Ambul Denia coming into the team, but I wouldn't expect that, particularly with how well the quicks have performed over the last year.
Okay. Speaking of Sanath Jayasuriya, coach of the Sri Lankan team, how has his coaching tenure been so far? And obviously we can see it on the field that things have changed, and how are people receiving such a legend coaching your national team?
Look, Sanath Jayasuriya is probably one of the most popular sporting figures in Sri Lanka, right? Like, I mean, I remember when I used to work at a different media organization, if you do an interview with Sana Jayasuriya, that one will get you hits. It doesn't matter how many videos you do or what he talks about, it'll get you hits because people love him, right? Like people who of my generation who grew up watching him, they love him. So his coaching tenure as well has, I think that popular sentiment has followed him into his coaching tenure. And at the same time, Sri Lanka have seen some successes that they have not seen over the past decade or so. Beating India in a ODI series, beating New Zealand in an ODI series for the first time in 12 years, I'm hearing. So, I mean, it's not something you expect, but, all these things are kind of adding up. Winning a test in England was another one, right? I do think, I mean, if you look at the limited overs part of things, at least, Sri Lanka have been good at home for a couple of years now because they've kind of had conditions tailor-made for spinners, and a lot of overseas teams which are now moving towards, more batting friendly conditions have struggled, right? So that trend has continued under Sana Jayasuriya as well, and it has come under a lot of criticism, in that when Sri Lanka was so disappointing at the 2023 World Cup, that was one area that a lot of people in high places agreed that Sri Lanka need to change, that they need to get more batting friendly conditions domestically and when they play teams at home. And Sanath, in fact, was one of the people who was saying that as a pundit, right? But once he's become coach, the script seems to have flipped into, no, you know what, we're going to play to our strengths and we're going to make it as tough as possible for visiting teams in order to build our ranking points and also give the team confidence in winning, right? And I'm sure, beating a team like India would definitely have given them confidence. So it's kind of been a mixed bag, in that you're happy that there's success, but you're also a bit cautious about what the future holds, because the long-term plans are what most people are concerned with. Sri Lanka not playing the Champions Trophy, so they don't have an almost immediate ICC event coming, right? So they have a bit of time to build. In terms of how the team is feeling, I think it's an interesting thing, right? I think it is easier for players to take advice from somebody who they've seen perform at that level. When it comes to Sri Lanka cricket, like I said, like he's an icon, right? A lot of those players, I know they're quite young, but would have at least seen, highlights or whatever of Sana Jayasuriya playing cricket. So I think that definitely has an influence. So at the moment, things are going well. In terms of Test cricket, I would say though that this team has been good over the last two ICC WTC cycles, right? They were nearly in the final in the first one as well. In the previous cycle as well. And in this one, again, they're kind of pushing towards that top 2, top 3 mark, right? So I think they've just been building, and Sana Jayasuriya hasn't had the time now yet to have a positive or negative influence yet.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of the World Test Championship, what are your expectations? Obviously, you playing South Africa and Australia, and it's probably the worst schedule anybody can get. Whereas, obviously, Australia's got India, but I think South Africa may have the easiest of the schedules with playing Sri Lanka, with all due respect, and obviously Pakistan, right? How are you feeling about your chances of making the World Test Championship? Obviously, you need effectively 3 wins. So you have to steal something from South Africa and then make sure that you prepare probably one of the worst pitches in the world in goal. No, the most spinner-friendly pitches in goal to kind of, in that final game against Australia. Did you expect to be in this position? And, is not making the World Test Championship a failure for Sri Lanka?
I don't think it will be seen as a massive failure. As you said, the two fixtures aren't the easiest coming up, but I think they'll be disappointed if they come away from South Africa without a single win, right? Because as I mentioned, like Sri Lanka is a team that has been playing really well. South Africa is a very inexperienced team, and I'm sure the Sri Lankans take a lot of confidence in the fact that they beat a better South African side last time around. So I think there will be disappointment if they go home with only one win. Sorry, if they don't go home with a win under their belts. Australia, although a lot of people are confident because, Sri Lanka is playing them at home. Australia is the type of team that will always, steal a game from subcontinental tour, right? I mean, last time around as well, they got one win and the series was drawn. So it should be interesting. I think Sri Lanka will still find it's going to be tough for Sri Lanka because even if they do win one against South Africa, they're going to have to sweep Australia, right? So it's going to take a massive effort. I'm also excited though because this is what teams play for, right? This is what the World Test Championship is about, having not just India and Australia competing to make the final, or India, Australia, and England, but to have teams like New Zealand, South Africa, Sri Lanka. That's what it's supposed to be, right? That's what the tournament is supposed to be like, for those teams to also be really competitive. And it's interesting to me because couple of years ago when the SA20 started, it was all, South Africa has given up on Test cricket, they don't care about it anymore and all that. And now you're in this position. And similarly, Sri Lanka, we, I think, played like 4 tests in 1 year, 5 in another. And there were all these chats about, okay, they don't care about Test cricket. And now teams like South Africa and Sri Lanka in a position where one of them you could very well likely make it to the final. So it's very exciting to me. Back to your question on the chances, I think it's 50-50. It's going to be tough. Even if there's a win in South Africa, you have to go back and win 2 against Australia. So it's going to be a tough couple of months for Sri Lanka.
It's the hope that kills you.
Oh, Tim, don't say that again. No, but it's interesting because as Estelle was talking, she's like, South Africa had given up on Test cricket, let alone our limited overs teams are just playing some horrible cricket right now. So it's it's a different time in South Africa where the Test team is actually the team that's actually doing quite well.
Yes, we've lost 1 out of 10 if you take away the New Zealand series, which is pretty cool. I suppose for me would be, what do you think you need to do to get a win out of South Africa? So,
And
are you looking to bat first, part of the runs, put pressure on from that way on a very inexperienced batting lineup, or what is the game plan from Sanjay Surveyor that's going to get you that win, or 2
and
wins?
also, which venue do you think you can get the win? That's a interesting one.
I will firstly say nobody knows what Sanjay Surya's plans are, right? Because whatever we predict, he'll come out with something else. But I do think, to be honest, the first game is going to be the important one, because I mean, if you look at the 2019 series as well, and you also look at what just happened between New Zealand and India, right? It's a weird phenomenon where these teams who are not expected to win anything win the first one, and suddenly then the opposition kind of roll over. Like if you look at the 2019 series, Sri Lanka basically pulled off a miracle in Durban on the back of 1 innings, right? Or if you want to count Vishwa Fernando's, then 2 innings. And then suddenly the next test, they were the better team, right? They chased down a total of, I think, 180 something or 190 something quite comfortably. And it looked like actually that South Africa were the lesser team and Sri Lanka were kind of the dominant team. Similarly, in this India-New Zealand series as well, no one expected New Zealand to take a test. They win the first test and suddenly India no longer, everyone's talking about Indian dynasty is done, all of that. So I think the first test in Durban is going to be really important for Sri Lanka. If they can get a good result there, they'll be really, really confident about going into that second game.
Okay, so
What a pity
the
we don't have 3
heroics of
tests.
Durban
All
are
I
going to
say.
continue.
I said, what a pity we don't have 3. That's
Yeah.
all I will say.
At this point in time in the World Test Championship, the less test matches, the better. And that's the thing. That's the reason why we have such a clumped top of the table, right? Is that the big teams are playing 4 or 5 series around the world, whereas the smaller teams are busy playing 2 test matches everywhere. And
But
there's always
that
going to be
also gives
a
them an advantage, right? Like, I think it's a kind of
Exactly.
50-50 thing where,
Yeah.
Sri Lanka have only, South Africa and Sri Lanka
Hmm.
have only 4 games and they have to win 3. Whereas if you had maybe 2-3 test series, you have to win maybe 4 out of 6. So it's, I feel like sometimes having more tests means that you can fail. Like, you don't have to win every game, right?
Yes. There's
yes,
room
but
room for a dip.
I don't think so. I'm of the opinion the less test matches you play, the better it is for you, especially if you're a small nation that knows how to win games and can avoid the big 3. The reason why South Africa is in this position is that we didn't play Australia, we didn't play England, and we played India at home in a shortened test match series. If that test match series was 4, we probably would have lost a few more. And for me, that's if the ICC want to go this way, happiness. I'm great. I just know in the next test cycle, I've got India and I've got Australia. And most likely we'll have Australia away from home. So that's going to be a problem. But yeah, it's look, like 2 and 3 out of the next 4. That's fine. If you don't make it, you don't make it. And we know why we're in this position as South Africa, Tim. It's that New Zealand tour. But yeah, we gave up on test cricket, but somehow test cricket's bring us back.
I was looking at our stats over the last 12 months and Sri Lanka's in terms of the batting, because I think that's where it's going to be won. I don't think it's going to be won at the bowling. I think it's going to be won at the batting or the batting frailties. Sri Lanka, the last 12 months, have got 7 batters averaging over 40. We've got 3. One of them is Viran Mulder. That tells you everything you need to know about our team.
All I'm saying is Shukri's also got a plan. I can't, as Estelle says, we can't look into Southern Jaya series plans. We don't know what they are. We have an idea of what Shukri is going to do. And Tim, you might see a Marco Jansen, Vian Mulder 6-7 or 7-8 combination there to play in this test match, which isn't bad. Because then, Vian can be quite deadly in those conditions. But it's actually quite fascinating. Last time we played a subcontinental team in Durban and PE, we just needed Simon Hum and Keshav Maharaj to win us a test match or a test series. Estelle, speaking about South Africa, any things that worry you about playing the Proteas here in South Africa?
Yeah, I think it's a different time in the year as well, isn't it? Kind of running into winter, something like that, colder season.
No, it's summer. It's just perhaps a little bit earlier, a fraction earlier than because of SA20. So it's a month earlier because of SA20. That's all.
Yeah, so I think those are some of the things that really, I think, bother the Sri Lankans in that, if it's cold, if it's a bit gloomy, those are the things that kind of get to us in our heads at least. So that would be one concern. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on how Sri Lanka handle, from a Sri Lankan perspective, how they handle Rabada and also Keshav Maharaj, because Sri Lanka have struggled against him in Test cricket, right? So those two, I think, will be the big worries. But as you said, like 7 batters with an average over 40, only 2 of them are new players, right? You've got everyone else is experienced, has played Test cricket for years and years. So they should stand up to that challenge. I think, if anything, it's a massive test for them, and it is also something that is important for their legacy, right? Guys like Dimut Karunaratne, Dinesh Chandimal, Angelo Matthews, I'm not sure they will be playing much in the next cycle. So this is their opportunity to really make their mark. And they've been, I would say, Karunaratne gets a lot of credit. and rightly so, as one of the better openers in the last decade or so, right, in Test cricket. But I don't think the likes of Dinesh Chandimal really get enough credit for how good he's been as a Test batter in that middle order, particularly from um, people outside Sri Lanka. So these are the kind of series where you want to make runs and you want to show your mettle, right? Because last time, I mean, it's very funny to me when people talk about the 2019 series and say, South Africa were on the way down, and Sri Lanka had one fluke good innings, and then everything turned around from that. But Rabada was as good as we've seen him before and after that series. Dean Elgar was pretty good. Amla, I think almost done with his Test career, and so was Dale Steyn. But South Africa is still a very good team. So I think this time, if Sri Lanka do win, then it also establishes the fact that last time it wasn't just a fluke or anything. This is a quality Test team, and they're good at cricket away from home as well.
Yeah. And to me, there's no fluke in Test cricket. To play cricket for 5 days is ridiculous, and there's no luck. There's many things that go against you or with you in the 4 days. So we respected Sri Lanka for that, because Kusal Pereira was just out of this world at that time, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And those still issues that South Africa can't bowl out the tail. Tim's issues, which is Tim's biggest issue, still remain. Look, it's going to be quite interesting. But I think, and if you look at the strength of that squad and you look at this squad, you find yourself in a situation where you're like, this could happen again. And you have two teams that are equal. One team, as Tim said, with a better batting lineup and possibly a bowling lineup that can keep them in the game and keep them competitive, whereas another team has a very good bowling lineup. And the question obviously is, how will the batters come through? They're young, they're inexperienced, they're trying to establish themselves in Test cricket. They're also trying to play this little bit aggressive brand of Test cricket where they try to put teams under pressure up top. And there's holes in the South African batting lineup that Sri Lanka can expose. So it's that Test series wasn't a fluke, and this one is not going to make that one look better. This one's going to establish Sri Lanka as a Test powerhouse again, and also it will go into the favor of the fact that Australia need to be afraid, and to a certain extent, if that happens, then that's the case. For me, South Africa needs to snuff it out, take the 2 wins, walk home, and then go to play Pakistan and win there, and sit and watch other people fight to make the final of the World Test Championship. And to a certain extent, that's what you want, Estelle. You want Sri Lanka to come, take the 2 wins, walk home, and then we can play with one Test match against Australia, and then hopefully it's you and Australia.
To be honest,
at the World Test Championship
I would like South Africa and Sri Lanka to share this series, then thrash Australia and Pakistan, and Sri Lanka and South Africa to make the final and score the victory, right?
Yes.
Yes.
They will all meet at Lords. Then we'll all meet at Lords. Okay, I'm with you. You heard that. Both sets of players. We didn't start it here, but it's an idea. Share the series and then go play at Lords. But Estelle, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I mean, the big concern obviously is the batting. What happens to Aiden Markram?
I'll give you the response the coach. Let me give you the response the coach said. Aiden Markram in Test cricket is fine. In coloured clothing, he's not. But you're not going to drop him. And he has the ability at home to score big runs, especially against Sri Lanka. He likes scoring runs against Sri Lanka. So we're hoping that whatever happened in the T20s and limited overs this year does not cloud the fact that this guy's pretty good and can score runs in Test cricket. So it's a different setup. Two different coaches, two different setups, two different messages. We assume we thought there'd be one message, but it seems like there's different messages, and Coach Shukri has a secret sauce that he's not sharing with Coach Rob. So I'm a believer in Aiden Markram. I'm also a believer in Tristan Stubbs. I can't believe I said that. Oh my word.
all I will say is Markham averages 40 over the last 12 months in this format. I'm not worried about him in Test cricket. I have my issues with him in white ball. Test cricket, I've got no issues.
Yeah. And he's the key. If South Africa going to win the series, he needs to step up and score runs and needs to lead from the front. And in Bangladesh, he did quite well. Opened the batting with Tony DeZorzi. They got some sizable partnerships in one of the tests. It's about just laying the foundation for the rest of the guys to come through. And the great thing is Timber's back. So, he's the best batter we've had over the last 4 years. So it's him and Aiden who effectively now need to step up and take South Africa to the World Test Championship.
Our main concern is we're going to be 120 for 5 in every innings. That's our issue. And then we're going to rely on Marco Judson, Vian Mulder, and the rest of the tail to somehow get us to 250. That's where we are. That's our main concern. We don't really have 100% confidence in the top 6. That's the truth.
Tim, if we're 120 for 5 next week Thursday, I am coming to Cape Town and I'm having words with you. No, man. Oh, you imagine.
Are you not worried about the top 6? I'm worried about the top 6.
Look, I've taken out of my head, and I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to think positively. Tony scored his maiden century, so we want more. So he's going to step up. Aiden's
Beddingham's going to be in?
Test match.
Beddingham's going to be there.
Yeah, Tony's going to be there. Markham's going to be there. Stubbs will be there. Timber's going to be there. David Beddingham. The person who's going to sit out is probably Ryan Rickleton, but depending on how it looks and feels with Vian Mulder, I think they might go with Vian there. Vian's just scored his maiden Test century as well after 35 matches. So
I think he debuted in that 2019 series, didn't he?
Yes, and it's taken him 5 years. It's been a long 5.5 years. Look, Tim said it. It's the hope that kills you. I just hope we're not 120 for 5, because if we are, my word, we've given away such a massive opportunity. Okay. Estelle, thank you very much. All I can say is good luck to you in Sri Lanka. I know that there's some players who came down, some players got pulled out of the ODI side because it's a very important Test series. And so we look forward to some high quality cricket, and we look forward to have you on probably at the end of the series to digest and try to figure out what pitch you need to set up for goal to make sure that Australia does not make it to that World Test Championship final.
Thanks so much, guys, for having me. Hopefully we meet at Lord's.
Yes. And they mustn't send us to another random ground. We want Lords. We deserve Lords. Yeah.
Then we'll fill it up, won't we?
No, yes, definitely. I'll be there. I'll definitely be there. For those 5 days, my word, I'll be there. Sure. Thank you, Estelle. Thank you very much. Please do catch Estelle on her various socials, which we're going to be posting, and your new podcast, Estelle. That's awesome. And thank you very much again.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Tim, I've never been scared of a Test series before. Okay, that Australia series, Sandpaper Gate, I was scared. But this one matters a lot. It does. It really, really does. And I hope our players...
It sets up the whole summer. That's the point. It sets up the whole summer. If it's a 0-0, one is rained out and one is a draw, the summer is finished. No, but
don't say that.
The summer, effectively.
Not say that.
But it is. If that happens, I said if it happens, then the summer is over. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just putting out the facts. I'm putting out the facts.
I hear you. I hear you a lot. Yeah, some people will be like, it's Durban. It's when it happens. It's a big difference. But we're hoping for 5 days of no rain. And you can rain elsewhere in the country. You can rain in Cape Town for a couple of days, but it's been raining as well. And you can rain up here, but please don't go to Durban. Please don't rain. We need a result. We really do need a result. But Tim, some people have said the summer was supposed to start when India came. That didn't happen. So we don't want to wait until Pakistan for the summer to start, right?
Quite. Absolutely.
But anyway, that brings us to the end of our show. Good luck to the Proteas. Good luck to Sri Lanka. And yeah, remember, this is the Full Quota Pod. Please follow us on X at Full Quota Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also for those audio feeds on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, Full Quota Podcast. And also, please do remember, you can buy us some coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Full Quota Podcast. Thank you very much to Estelle. Good luck to everybody. Enjoy the start of the Test cricketing summer. From us here at the Full Quota Pod, it's goodbye and lesale kakahiso.